Okay. Good evening, and welcome to the Council of Governments August 7th, 2018 meeting. If you could please stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I don't see a roll call on here. We don't do that, huh? Okay, sorry. Okay. First on the agenda is consent agenda. There are multiple items on the consent agenda. Is there any board member that wishes to comment on a consent agenda item?
I would like to pull item 1, so I may abstain.
Okay. Item 1 pulled. Any other? No? Okay. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Huh? Okay. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda item 1?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Is there... Abstain, yeah.
You can take the balance 2 through 6.
2 to 6, okay. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda item 2 through 7A?
Yes. Move.
Move. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Justin, seconded by John. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next is regular agenda. Item number 8, public comment. Each person has 5 minutes to comment. Comments shall be limited to the items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. Is there any public comment for any items not posted on the agenda?
Good afternoon, Board. Kathy Topol, Ground Senior Services. I just wanted to pass these out. So many of you know or may not know that last year Common Ground was awarded $5310 to provide mobility management for Calaveras County. And one of the things that we've done through that program is created this Health and Wellness Transportation Directory. And this is all 3 counties, Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne, and all of the recent, most current transportation companies that are providing transports throughout the 3 counties. As the mobility manager, we've done quite a few things over this past year that have done a lot for our clients, our riders. Number 1 is that Stockton Cardiology, a lot of people were leaving the county to go to Stockton Cardiology. And we were doing a lot of those transports. They were trying to find their own rides. And Mark Twain Hospital brought up their physicians 2 days a week. So what we did was we started taking these people that we were taking to Stockton and now taking them and getting them to go to Mark Twain Healthcare or Mark Twain Hospital. So that's just one of them. Lab draws the same way. We got a request to go out of county for lab draws because everybody thought that they had to go to the doctor that prescribed the lab draws to get their labs done. Well, we've now got them going to Mark Twain to get their labs done here and then sent to their out-of-county doctors. Recently, we did a coordination with Calaveras Connect to where we have an elder that his wife was put into Mark Twain, no, sorry, it's called Avalon now. And every day he goes there to sit with his wife almost all day. And we did some coordination with Calaveras Connect, so now they're transporting him. So those are just some of the things that we've been doing with the mobility management program. We met with and I'm not sure if it's called AMMA or if it's AMA, how do you, ALMA, okay, who's doing the coordinated plan with Cliff Chambers doing the short range transit plan. We met with them and gave them some of our information. So we just wanted to update you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? No? Okay. Move on to agenda item number 9, presentation on the draft Central Sierra Zero Emission Vehicle Readiness Plan. Okay.
Thank you. This project was funded through a California Energy Commission grant received by the Tuolumne County Transportation Commission. TCTC invited CCOG to be involved in this project along with Alpine and Amador County, making it a 4-county partnership opportunity and study area. No local contribution was requested of the CCOG, so this really was a resource provided by the Tuolumne County Transportation Commission, so we were happy to be able to be involved and be invited to participate. The process began in 2017, and TCTC hired the Center for Sustainable Energy, who I invited here this evening to give us a presentation kind of on the results of the study, specific to Calaveras County and kind of what their recommendations are in the plan. And I think it's just, this is an informational item, not requesting any action from the council. It's just an opportunity to hear kind of the results of the process and then have a subject matter expert here to answer questions, or if you want to have a discussion, feel free. So I'll introduce Kevin Wood with the Center for Sustainable Energy.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation and opportunity to present tonight. So my name is Kevin Wood with the Center for Sustainable Energy. We're an independent nonprofit that has worked on a variety of electric vehicle and electric vehicle infrastructure planning projects in the state. We also help administer the state rebate program for plug-in electric vehicles and one of the state's incentive programs for plug-in electric vehicle infrastructure. So the agenda of my presentation, there's a lot of information we'll try to go through relatively quickly, but overview of the project, discussion of kind of existing conditions for electric vehicle charging in the county now, what are some highlights in the plan, especially around identified locations for EV charging, mention of fleet considerations, some information on costs and funding, and then kind of recommendations, which include how do we do outreach and promote this plan. So just an overview of the policy context, why do a plan like this, besides the fact that the Energy Commission had offered funding. The Governor Brown in 2012 issued an executive order calling for 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road in California by 2025, and for there to be easy access to infrastructure for these. We're actually on pace as a state to meet that 2025 goal. And then in 2018, Governor Brown issued a new directive to reach 5 million electric vehicles by 2030, which is going to be a higher hurdle to reach along with the infrastructure to support these vehicles. There's a kind of whole regulatory regime behind those goals that are various state agencies are putting into place to kind of move us towards those goals, but there's a lot of local actions that local and regional agencies can take that support those goals. So just on a local level, your regional transportation plan had goals to implement kind of transportation policies that result in regional air quality improvement and to promote projects such as alternative fuel programs that can help improve the regional air quality. So the overall goal of this project was to improve opportunities for zero-emission vehicle readiness in the Central Sierra region, those 4 counties, including Tuolumne, Amador, Alpine, as well as Calaveras. And we don't need to go through all those objectives because we'll go through them in the slides. But before we went any farther in the presentation, we wanted to make sure we were kind of on the same page when we're talking about PEVs and EVs and ZEVs. It's a bunch of acronyms. So the overall project said zero-emission vehicle readiness plan, and zero-emission vehicles can include battery electric vehicles that run 100% on electricity, plug-in hybrid vehicles that run on electricity as well as gas, and then hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are also considered zero-emission vehicles. For the purpose of this planning exercise, we took a look at hydrogen, and there's really not any current plans or activity that's relevant to the Central Sierra region around hydrogen, so we kind of just set that aside for this plan and really focused on the plug-in electric vehicles and two primary types of charging infrastructure for those vehicles. There's DC fast charging, which most battery electric vehicles can use some form of DC fast charging, and then level 2, which both battery electric vehicles can use, and also all the plug-in hybrid vehicles can charge on level 2. So those DC fast chargers that are primarily installed in public and commercial locations, those can offer, for an average vehicle, about an 80% charge in 30 minutes. So it's a little longer than filling up your car with gas, but it's more similar to a gas station type experience, a quick stop and then you're on your way. And the level 2 charging, which is installed in some public locations as well as home and workplace locations, that adds between 12 and 30 miles of range per hour of being plugged in. And so that's great for longer 12-time locations, places where we parked for an hour or more. And as we'll see on future slides, we're recommending chargers of both of these types in the region. So when we look at the existing stations in Calaveras, this map actually shows most of the whole region. The Calaveras is in the shaded area. There's only a few current locations. Near Angels Camp along the New Melones Reservoir, there's one level 2 charging station, and then the other charging stations are up in the Murphys area at a couple bed and breakfasts and inns. And some of those charging stations were provided by Tesla in a program where Tesla, the automaker, was actually offering free charging stations to businesses such as wineries and inns as kind of a destination for their customers. So that's kind of all there is today, is about six level 2 charging stations in the Calaveras region. As the overall Central Sierra region, we have about 400 plug-in electric vehicles owned by residents today, and based on kind of trends and projections, that could be, on a high side, over 1,000 by 2020, and over 2,000, owned by residents in the region by 2025. So that's a big increase in the number of vehicles just we expect to see locally. I don't know if they belong to anyone in this room, but I did see 2 out in the parking lot, one by the Master Gardeners, a Chevy Volt over by the Master Gardeners, and a Ford C-Max, both plug-in hybrids, just out in this parking lot. I was following a Tesla down Highway 49 from Jackson today, so these vehicles are definitely out there. And there's a state model called the EVI Pro that offers projections for the region. And for Calaveras County, they said we need 80 to 90 stations by 2025, again, compared to about 8 stations in the region today. So that's a big increase in the number of charging stations just to serve residents and local traffic, not visitors. And so we did some modeling, looking at potential visitor numbers, looking at the kind of statewide, which currently there's about 500,000 electric vehicles on the road in California today, and said based on some traffic numbers, we think that just Calaveras would need another 28 level 2 stations to serve a visitor population, plus an additional 18 DC fast chargers, and that's something we didn't talk about yet, but the model, the state kind of projection says that this region needs 18 DC fast chargers, just Calaveras County, which Calaveras has no DC fast chargers right now. So that's a big increase for a total of 122 ports by 2025 So that's a big number, but hopefully there's activities and recommendations in this plan that will help Calaveras County get there. So in siding recommendations, we took a look at a number of factors. We looked at parks and tourist destinations. We also looked at kind of the business districts and the city of Angels Camp and the developed areas, and tried to identify sites that could be good for charging. We identified, as a region, you don't have to read everything on the site. As a region, we identified, or the greater Central Sierra region, excuse me, we identified over 200 sites, and I think there was at least 50 of those sites in Calaveras County that would be identified as good locations, either for level 2 or for DC fast charging. The simple answer is anywhere that people go where there's a lot of parking and that they stay for a little while could be a good spot for charging. So I know that like Treats Market around the corner here was identified. The government center and library was identified, and lots of other locations, as you see on this slide, were identified as potentially good areas for electric vehicles in the region. And this was just also some lodging locations, as we mentioned. Lodging is kind of where they've adopted charging so far, as those business owners for their guests have decided to provide that amenity. But that's definitely a key consideration. For those DC fast chargers, we looked at a region at the major travel corridors and said that, if we want people, especially in those all-electric vehicles that can't go to a gas station, they need to have coverage to be able to travel the region's highways. And so we mapped out locations in the region for those DC fast chargers along the 49, you can see the 26, and the 4 going up to Big Bear Valley area. So there's a number of locations identified for those DC fast chargers as well. We also took a look at fleets. We looked at some transit fleets and just other fleets, including school districts. Part of the state policy around zero-emission vehicles is, it's not on here, is requiring transit agencies to move to zero-emission vehicles, as well as there's been a lot of state policy around school buses, with out of concern for public health and school kids' health. Some of these statewide policies haven't really taken into account local considerations, and so that's something we kind of call out in our fleet work, is that there's fuel cost savings and emission savings possible from electric vehicles, but especially in an area like this, you want to be careful in the deployment because of cold temperatures, mountainous terrain, remote locations, and utility interruptions is something that has come up. I saw both at a West Point newspaper and your kind of fire preparedness stuff, but as many of you have heard, PG&E has a program where they're going to be turning off power for fire danger risks. And so, a lot of these challenges, we recommend, where possible in these fleet applications, plug-in hybrids make a great solution where you have a gas engine as well as the electricity. But we also see on facilities that have generators, you can charge your vehicle off those generators as well. And so when siting infrastructure and considering fleet adoption, thinking about what you do in a power interruption as well is going to be an important consideration. So costs, this is kind of a lot of numbers on these tables, but the costs that go into electric vehicle charging include both the hardware, the actual charging unit, permitting, which is something that is kind of up to local governments, and then the installation. And the installation can vary widely depending on if you have sufficient power on site or you have to do major utility upgrades. Some of the other cost drivers are things like trenching or concrete patching if you have to go across hardscape in a parking lot. But the bottom line here for those level 2 stations, it can be low as $1,000 a unit or as high as $20,000 per unit. So it's a pretty big cost range. And those DC fast chargers run between $19,000 up to close to $100,000 per unit. And we've seen actually costs that exceed $100,000 per unit on those DC fast chargers. These costs are not expected to be borne by public agencies. Generally, a lot of these costs are, being paid for by utility programs, other grants and incentive programs. But, one of the best things that we recommend folks do in terms of keeping these costs in check is if you're doing any major construction projects, if you can do pre-wiring, then that really lowers the installation cost. California Building Code for new construction does require pre-wiring for electric vehicle charging stations since 2013. So new buildings being built should include some provision that's going to make it easier to install charging infrastructure in the future. So of those funding opportunities, PG&E did have a program that was funding kind of workplace and public level 2 charging. This program is now fully committed. They've issued all their funding. It offered a rebate. It covered the full cost of installation plus offered a rebate on the equipment. The only project we know of in the broader 4-county region is the Adventist Hospital in Sonora got 10 stations through this program. The PG&E does now have an active EV fleet program. So if the transit agency, schools, or any other fleet was interested in adopting kind of medium or heavy duty vehicles, PG&E will pay for the installation of charging for those types of vehicles. There's another program called Electrify America that's being funded by Volkswagen as part of their diesel emission settlement, where they're spending $800 million in California on electric vehicle infrastructure over 10 years. Unfortunately, they focused on primarily on the urban areas. They do have a few million that were designated for rural areas, but it looks like it's probably going to go in the Central Valley. They do have some plans to put some infrastructure on Highway 395 in the eastern Sierras, including a station in Bridgeport, as well as some stations leading into the Yosemite area. So we hope that in future rounds of funding that they'll consider, areas that connect, and obviously Calaveras County is a key connecting area, between the valley, over the Sonora Pass or Ebbets Pass, over to Bridgeport. There's other state funding programs as well. There's a loan program, and there's a separate pot of air quality mitigation funds that are funded by Volkswagen that will also be going towards electric vehicle infrastructure. So I already mentioned permitting, but permitting is one important thing that the public agencies can do. And there's information in the plan about permitting and a county-specific permitting guide. But AB 1236, which was a bill that was signed by the governor, required all jurisdictions to adopt streamlined permitting for EVCS. And Calaveras County did adopt a streamlined permitting ordinance. I believe the City of Angels Camp did not. There's no real enforcement, or there hasn't been since 2015 any real enforcement. There's no penalty for not having adopted this. But the state did recently come out with this, with a new guidebook and this checklist that says, it's not just about adopting the ordinance, it's making sure your process all the way down is set up to deal with electric vehicle charging. And so that's another recommendation that we would, have the region take a little deeper look with the new state guidance that's now out and see if there's further improvements that could be made. So just some, next steps. This plan is in draft, and we're getting feedback. But once we have this plan finalized, we hope that it's going to be implemented, and that the partners in the region will continue to work to implement it and integrate recommendations from this plan into your local planning efforts, complete the permit streamlining, as we've mentioned, and when considering vehicle infrastructure, really thinking about would this work? How does this support resiliency in the face of natural disasters or power shutoffs? And there's ways to kind of integrate those energy resources to enhance resiliency. And really a lot of the investment we expect to see in infrastructure is going to be made by the business community, individual business owners. So if we can engage with them That's going to go a long way towards getting this infrastructure. And, in your regional transportation plans, if you can track progress, keep track of how many electric vehicle stations are going into the region, that's going to help. And then just some other kind of citing recommendations, definitely utilizing and promoting funding opportunities. There's enough other priorities that public agencies have to fund besides electric vehicle infrastructure. So the more you can get those grants and incentives into your county, obviously the better. There does need to be some investment and focus on making sure that a DC fast charge network is widespread enough that it can really support travel through the region, while continuing to support level 2 at all sorts of destination sites. And one of the things we found in other regions that's been successful is, offering some regional EVI expert or a technical advisory program, someone that folks can call if they have questions about installing infrastructure, what funding programs are available, or things like that. And that's what I have. That's my contact info. I'm happy to answer questions now. We're also happy to receive feedback on this plan. And Alex Padilla from Tuolumne County Transportation Council is the public agency lead for this plan as well.
Thank
I got
you.
a question. I didn't see any, you didn't do much study of, like, I see fleet stuff there, but not for public transportation such as busing and such. The charging pads that you put in the road, are those not part of this or accessible in this?
So
type of
the,
thing?
we do have, we did a little bit more information, and some of the fleets that provided information got some specific feedback on vehicles. That included Mark Twain School District and Calaveras Unified Elementary School District. We sent some information about their vehicles, including school buses, directly to them. The kind of charging pads in the ground you're talking about, there's a couple different manufacturers that make that kind of inductive charging. There's not one set of standards. The buses, a lot of the buses that are being made can use the same DC fast charger that a car does, but they use the DC fast charger where it charges a car in 30 minutes and it charges a bus in like 4 hours on a plug-in. You can do the pads on the ground as well, but the kind of technology to have like a pad at each bus stop where the bus charges a little bit at each stop is not, it works well at like an airport or like a college campus, but for longer distance public transit routes, those kind of pads don't offer a lot of power.
Yep.
Any other questions? I have a question. What wasn't mentioned on this, and you touched it on the rural area, there's not a lot of funding coming to these areas, but then the second part of it, which I'm learning about, is vendors aren't covering the charging stations in these areas either. So when you're trying to put in a charging station, there's no payment mechanism because there's so few right now, and we're so rural, there's not, you get to the part where you can get the funding to put the charging stations in, but then the other end is they won't cover it. So how do you address that part of it with the vendors?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, some of the charging stations also require cell coverage or some kind of communications that for the ones that accept payment, which we know is a challenge. So like the current businesses that are offering it, like the N.N. Murphy's, it's free, and so they don't need a fancy unit that has those kind of communications ability. But in the Tesla program and in other programs, the site host is taking on responsibility for that unit when they accept the free unit. The maintenance, although the bigger charging companies are not as interested in the rural areas, if a business owner wants to buy or can get a grant to to get a station, there's certainly lots of vendors that will sell you a station, and the installation can be done by local electricians, and even most of the maintenance is not complicated. The worst thing that happens on these stations is if someone leaves a plug on the ground and it gets driven over, you can replace just the plug and not the whole station. So we would definitely, if we were going to see more activity in the region, we'd hope that there would be, some local electricians that would learn to work on these stations to keep them running.
But I think the problem still is the payment, is recuperating the cost for the maintenance of them. And if there's no payment mechanism and there isn't a vendor that's going to supply that, then what benefit does that bring to, say, for us, the City of Angels, if we can't recuperate that cost for maintenance?
Yeah, so obviously in the case of the inn, has
Yes.
customers who are paying to stay there. For the city, you're correct, that would definitely be a challenge. So, for the city, we would recommend a payment-taking station. In Amador, they've installed a couple that do take payments.
Because I don't know how we're going to, because we currently have funding for two, but the hiccup is the payment, and if we can't get over that hurdle, then I don't know what's next. So it really puts us at the city at a, while we're trying to meet some of these requirements, how much time we're going to waste fighting the vendor if we're not able to figure out a payment mechanism.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what Amador is doing, I guess. I don't know.
One real low-tech thing I've seen is places have put a parking meter, old-fashioned drop your coins in parking meter, and traditionally EV drivers, are happy to find the infrastructure and will put their coins in.
Yeah.
It's hard to enforce. There's also another nonprofit called Adopt a Charger that has worked with some state parks, and they've gotten donors to fund not just the installation, but to help offset the cost of electricity and fund ongoing maintenance in state parks. And I believe they might have used one of those Iron Rangers kind of drop box
Yeah.
and encouraged donations for the use of the charger as well.
Okay. No, thank you.
I got one question on the, you were saying it costs up to $100,000 for that fast charging station. So there's the $100,000, then there's the cost to give the electricity. How long does it take to recoup? And I'll use even like San Francisco, somewhere it's not rural. How long does it take to charge somebody? How many charges does it take at $30 for a half an hour or whatever, a filling station price? How long does it take to recoup that amount of capital that you put out?
So we've seen, as short as 6 years, if you're lucky, to upwards of 10 years.
So on one station?
On one station. And it depends on usage and it depends on what you charge. Those DC fast chargers, there's very few site hosts that would ever fully pay for that. The model on the DC fast chargers has mostly been kind of companies coming up and they're owning and operating the station. And for example, Rayleigh's just offers a little corner of the parking lot.
Right.
And it's a company that's owning, operating, and maintaining that station. They keep all the revenue.
So they're
but
offering as a service to their customers that are coming in to buy groceries, though. Are there any companies that are putting in just charging stations on the opportunity to make money down the road yet? Or is it just...
Yeah, so
so
the Volkswagen Electrify America program, although it's being done as kind of a penalty, they consider it a private investment, and Volkswagen expects that in maybe 10 or 20 years that they'll make their money back from installing those stations. And Energy EVgo, that's another big player in the fast charging, actually also NRG had a penalty to the state for defrauding the state during the energy crisis, and part of how they paid off that penalty was installing charging infrastructure, but they're operating as a business expecting to kind of make money on their charging infrastructure eventually.
I'm curious, do you have an estimate of what the cost would be for an average electric vehicle to plug in, what the energy or electrical cost to recharge that vehicle is?
Yeah, so it at home overnight using a time of use rate For me to charge my car to go 100 miles costs about $2, $2 to $3. So it's, compare that to a Prius that gets 50 miles a gallon at $3 a gallon gas, it's about 30-40% less, and compared to a 20-mile-a-gallon car, it's less than half, or 60% less.
$6 for a car that'll travel 300 miles?
Yeah,
Now?
for at home overnight. The public charging stations do charge more. Often the public charging stations start to approach the cost of paying for gas. And to be able to recoup their costs, the kind of charging station providers do have to charge kind of more than the cost of electricity. But EV drivers are generally happy to pay a little bit.
So a B&B in Murphy's is going to pay a higher tier rate, right? And what, at $2 at your home rate, what's it going to be on the commercial rate? Is that going to double? Is that, I'm trying to figure out what the impact's going to be to the business owner and why we might have pushback for that.
So it's, if someone's charging overnight when the facility's not on its peak, it can actually be cheaper on the commercial rate than the home rate, just the way the commercial energy rates. But yeah, if the vehicle charging is adding to the facility peak load, it can be kind of double or triple what you pay at home. So it could cost, $6 or $8 for a full charge to that end. If they're charging $100 a night for their room, I mean, that is cutting into their profit, but it's still less than, they're not losing a ton of money.
Thank you.
Are any of these facilities energized by solar panels?
That's a great question. So we have a recommendation in the plan to consider integrating solar with EV charging. For one reason, the installation cost. If you have someone already at your building to install solar, running a little extra wire out to a charging station, is pretty cost effective when someone's already on site. And solar, depending on your building's energy use, can save you money on electricity. There is a few vendors that are making kind of direct solar-linked EV charging stations, including one that includes a battery. And so it's like a portable charging station. You can put it in any parking lot with a solar panel and a battery and a charger, and it doesn't connect to the grid. Those are pretty expensive, but in Fresno, they got a grant for 13 of those stations that are distributed in rural communities in Fresno County, with 90% of that being paid by the state, with maybe a 10% local match for kind of independent solar powered charging stations.
Interesting, okay.
Any other questions? Is there any public comment or question? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. On to agenda item number 10. Minute ordering approving the County Public Works Department request to reprogram Regional Surface Transportation Program Fund totaling $147,956 from the County Roadway Retro Reflectivity Upgrade Project on the O'Brien Ferry Road Left Pocket Project. Wow, that's a mouthful. Okay.
All right, well, thank you. You explained the items, so I'll just jump right in here. On the first page of the staff report is a table that shows the last 2 cycles of programming that we've conducted, call for projects processes to program Regional Surface Transportation Program funds for city and county projects. So you can see the Burns Ferry Road the County Roadway Sign Retroflectivity Upgrade Project currently has programmed $196,598 on it in fiscal year 17-18. The county received a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant last year to fund a majority of that project. They still do need $48,000 for a match for that project, so they're requesting moving $147,000 of the $196,000 to the O'Burns Ferry Road left turn pocket. And the left turn pocket project is a safety project. The COG's previously committed funding to it. That project has $387,000 currently programmed on it. So the idea is that this funding would be moved to that project to complete a gap to deliver construction for that project. So staff has reviewed this with Technical Advisory Committee. The COG has a timely use of funds policy that defines the process for reprogramming, and this really gives the COG the discretion and flexibility in these reprogramming requests, and we review these requests on a case-by-case basis. And the first priority is to reprogram a project in the same fiscal year, and as you can see, there's no projects in that fiscal year. So the second priority is to close a shortfall or deliver a project on the current program or current list of funded projects or other delivery purposes and needs. The city does have 2 projects on here that we've looked at. Murphy's Grade Road project has nearly $500,000 to that project. That project does need additional funding. However, as you'll see in the next item, we are recommending funding for that project. And this amount just wasn't enough to fill the gap to complete a meaningful construction phase for that project. And then the collector road striping is another city project that is programmed on here. The city did express that they might have a need for that, and at that time that gap was unknown, so we'll work with city staff on the needs for the collector road striping.
Yeah.
So based on that information, staff and the Technical Advisory Committee does recommend the COG board support this reprogram request. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
So moving this money from one project to the other, how do we acquire the money to put back into the reflectivity upgrade?
So the reflectivity upgrade project got grant funding to complete that project.
Okay, so
So that
that's
wouldn't
why we're doing
impact,
it.
yes,
Okay,
good question.
and I guess, so that kind of answered my other question. If that was gonna, by us doing that, does that put the county in a liability if something happens where somebody wants to sue the county because our signs and stuff is not meeting the requirements? Does that put us in a liability?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's why the project was originally funded, because of the critical need for them to meet the standards. But yes, that will be covered through that HSIP grant that they received. So this won't impact their ability to complete that project.
All right.
Any other board questions? No. Any public comment? No? Okay. So you need a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 601, right? Right. Okay. Agenda item
There's
11,
one absent.
right? Did I do that?
Yeah, you're right.
Are you counting that, or do you just want to count?
No, once they say all, she's counting it.
Okay. Okay, so agenda item 11. Approving programming of $1.158 million in regional surface transportation program and $284,814 in highway infrastructure program for fiscal 1920. Amber?
Yes, thank you. Approximately every 3 to 4 years, the COG conducts a call for projects process. We just completed one last year and programmed the funds that you saw in the previous item. In February, we released a supplemental call for projects to program funds that we will be receiving in 1920 that weren't available during the last call for projects. Those sources are federal regional surface transportation program funds. So as you recall, last year we loaned $1.158 million in congestion mitigation air quality funds to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission to eliminate the risk of loss or lapsing funds that weren't going to be utilized within the timely use of funds timeline. So the repayment of that loan or exchange is coming back in 1920 as federal regional surface transportation program funds, which, although they're federal, are a little bit more flexible than CMAQ funds. CMAQ funds require an analysis and demonstration that a project has air quality benefits. So it was a little win, and we didn't get converted to state funds, but they are a little bit less restrictive funds. The other funding source with highway infrastructure program funds. These funds are a new funding source that just came out. It's not a part of the Highway Trust Fund money. It was federal general fund money that was approved through the Appropriations Act. So we don't know if those will continue to be approved, but they did approve 2 years of that funding. So we're estimated to receive $284,000 of HIP funds from last federal fiscal year and this federal fiscal year. So we'll be programming those in 1920 as well. So in total, there's 1.4 million to be programmed. So we released the call for projects guidelines, which identified the criteria for which we'll score applications. The city and county each submitted 2 applications. The City of Angels submitted an application to fund construction for the Murphy's Grade Road Improvement Project, which provides funding gap fill and other improvements from the high school on Murphy's Grade Road to Safeway, or Save Mart, my apologies, yes, on Demarest Road. The other project that they submitted an application for was Main Street Historic District Improvements, which implement improvements from the Main Street plan that was just previously approved a few years ago. That was a COG, Caltrans, and city partnership planning project. The county submitted the Old Burns Ferry Road left turn pocket project for construction money and the Mountain Ranch Road improvement project here from Government Center to Highway 49. So the Technical Advisory Committee met twice in May and at June to review the scoring of the applications and recommending programming to the COG board. The recommendation followed the scoring criteria and ground rules adopted by the COG for this process. And we recommended to apply all of the federal RSTP funds to the top ranked project for construction, which is the Angels Murphy's Grade Road improvements. And then the remaining HIP funds towards the Main Street Historic District improvements to fund preliminary engineering. And really the idea there is to prepare that project to leverage those funds and get ATP grant funds for construction of that project. I just want to note that this call for projects was definitely unique. We typically are programming around $200,000 to $400,000 a year, and so and those are usually state funds. So we usually are spreading those out amongst multiple projects, trying to get projects construction ready and shovel ready to leverage those funds. Since these funds are federal and it's such a large amount in 1 year, we have the opportunity to really put them towards a strong project that meets regional goals that came from a planning process and implement construction of a project. So this is an opportunity, but also a challenge. You know, spreading out these federal funds is a risk, and it's a risk definitely in this environment. We've had a lot of project delivery issues with the city and county, and we've talked a lot about it, and we've developed a lot of tools, and the call for projects is one tool that we're utilizing, you know, to work with the city and county on that issue. So I think that's all I need to say, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on our recommendation.
Any board question, comment? No? Okay.
I'll save that question for another time.
Okay. I'm going to turn it, any public comment? No?
I think
Okay.
I could just add, you know, I think that the TAC really came to the table on this effort. Both the city and county worked through this process and really were dedicated to going through that scoring rubric and picking the projects that really best met our regional goals. So I think although it's difficult sometimes to not fund every single project that comes to the table, I think as a regional agency, you know, we need to look out for the regional benefits of projects and getting a project delivered and to meet the timely use of funds deadlines. This timeline is very tight. You know, we have 1 year to obligate these funds.
So with that, is the motion on the table to approve item 11?
So moved.
Is there a second? John? So moved by Moretti, seconded by John. All in favor? Aye. So 601? Okay. Thank you for your support. And we are on to reports. Caltrans.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Gregoria Ponce, Caltrans District 10. Unfortunately, Director couldn't be here this evening. There was some scheduling conflicts. First, I want to say we really appreciate the continued strong partnership, reaching out, having ongoing meetings with Ms. Amber, Executive Director, coming out and also coming forward and meeting and just talking about a number of issues. So with that, if you recall, we've been having ongoing memos identifying some mutual interests and concerns. And in a follow-up to the June 5th letter, only 2 items really came forward that still needed to be addressed with the board, and I bring those forward now. Regarding State Route 12 in the Burson area, there were some signage issues with regards to location, and that's been addressed. We were able to accommodate the request, relocating the speed signs as requested by the board, and so that's been done. There was another request regarding State Route 449 intersection on examining a truck pull-out location, and we needed some additional information. So thank you for coming forward with that information. We've initiated a study examining the potential opportunities for that area for a truck pull-out, and a summary will be provided to the board by October 2019. Moving on to some general matters, we have the California Freight Mobility Plan for 2019. The department is updating that through various means. We're looking at describing the freight's critical economic significance to the economy and further articulating policy principles and goals to make goods movement successful. We're looking at the state as a whole, and the plan's being developed with support and input from an advisory committee that's been put together. And representatives include both public and private sector, state agencies, regional agencies, ports, maritime shipping, trucking, railroads, cargo owners, parcel delivery services, community and environmental advocates. And with that, we'll be releasing for public review in September 2019 the draft for comments, and we look forward to capturing your comments when that becomes available. At this time, I really don't have anything. Would the board like to ask me anything? Are there any items I can take back?
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is transit. Oh, sorry, city. Oh, sorry. I need a hard copy next time. Sorry, Connie, my bad.
Good evening. Exactly, no worries. Good evening, Vice Chair and the board. My name is Joshua Pack. I'm the Director of Public Works and Transportation for Calaveras County. I'm looking at page 260 of your packet to give you an update on projects included in the Calaveras CCOG CIP program. The first one on our list is the county roadway sign retroreflectivity upgrade. You just took action on this a few minutes ago. That is a project that we did. We were awarded a Highway Safety Improvement Program funding. The remaining funding that the board did just approve helps provide a local match to help fund that project. We'll be preparing a request for qualifications, a request for proposals for consultants on that here in the coming month or two. Hope to be under contract before the end of the calendar year and to begin work on that work with an anticipation to deliver that likely in 2021. The Mountain Ranch Road Turnout and Safety Improvement Program, that was also correspondence the board approved as part of 7A. We're working with the COG to close that project out. It's a project that we started working on as part of a safety project. After the design, we found that there was some elements that made that project infeasible. So we're working with the COG to iron out the details of closing that project out. The next project, O'Byrne's Ferry, I do want to highlight that we were, again, Project 10, allocated additional funds to that. That's been a project that's been on our books for quite a number of years. The Board of Supervisors did recently approve the project plans and specifications for that. We're actually dotting our last of our I's and crossing the last of our T's. That project will be out to bid likely in the next week to 10 days. So with an anticipation, we'll be delivering that project late in 2019. That project, through a rescope and a resize, we significantly reduced the size and scope of that project while still maintaining the core safety features, which has allowed us to shave off close to $900,000 to $1 million of that project. It was pretty overscoped, and so we've done that. It's now being able to make that feasible, primarily with this funding, with some other local funding, again, which also made it where we could work with the city to allocate the HIP and federalized RSTP funding for that project. It made a lot more sense. The small amount of funding with that, with the federal regulations and requirements, would have delayed the O'Byrne's Ferry project and pushed us back a calendar year, which would have increased the budget to that. So that was good for us, and that will allow us to deliver that, barring any surprises at bid time. Pine Street, the West Point Bike Path project, again, a project that's been on our books for quite a number of years. We just bid that project out to contractors. We received 2 bids. Valley Slurry Seal out of, I think, Sacramento was the apparent low bidder. Slightly over budget. I think we had $120,000. That was bid at $140,000. We'll be using local funds, local RUD funds, to augment that with the small gap. We'll be bringing that project to our board within the next month for approval, with construction to begin in mid to late September. State Route 4 Wagon Trail, we continue work on that. Our consultants have been doing a lot of field work. The property owners and the county has been working really well together. The next action that we have is to take an item to the board to establish a memorandum of understanding or agreement with Caltrans for right-of-way services. We hope to have that before the end of the calendar year. We've been working closely with the COG. Amber's been an instrumental person to try and keep that project working, so we appreciate Amber's efforts and Melissa's efforts on that. The next project, State Route 49 Gateway Airport and the Mountain Ranch PSR. We currently have, I believe that PSR proposal went out. We're expecting proposals on October 21st. That's the close of date. We'll be including the COG and Caltrans in the review of those proposals. We plan to bring the consultant that's selected as part of that process back to the Board of Supervisors on September 24th for approval, which will then begin the project study report phase of that project. Hope to have that done sometime. That'll probably take somewhere in the 9-month region and have something in place by mid-2020. Highway 49 Mountain Ranch Road intersection project. We've had a couple of milestones in recent months. We completed our CEQA and NEPA process. That was pretty instrumental because that project has a lot of cultural resources and other things that could potentially impact for environmental. We were able to navigate through that, again, through a rescope to slightly reduce the size and scope of the project while still maintaining its integrity and core function. That has been approved. We have started the right-of-way process with that. We have I believe 4 or 5 acquisitions, minor acquisitions of property in order to complete that project. We're hoping to deliver that in 2020. The last project is the Valley Springs School Safety Improvement Project. As a matter of fact, I think there's an event tonight at the school that I have a member of my staff attending. We've been working closely with the COG on that. We're looking forward to see completion of that here, which will then put us in a good position to compete for potential ATP or other similar grant opportunities. So stay tuned on that. That ends my report of the capital improvement program, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions? Don?
Isn't there also San Andreas Coke Street? Is that capital improvement?
Mike, please.
In San Andreas, I thought there was also a capital improvement project along
I
Coke
can,
Street.
Sure.
yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, that's in our COG ODWP because it's not a capital, it's a planning project that the COG is managing.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's try this again. Now, city quarterly report. Melissa's not here, so if there's any questions, Alvin and I can answer them. The two biggest things that have happened is we had a community event for both the Main Street and the Murphy's Grade project. So we combined them into one open house. And so at the firehouse a couple weeks ago, and that drew a lot of public members down to see the maps. And on the Murphy's Grade project, the staff was outreaching and meeting with individual property owners and addressing any of the concerns they had. And most of them have, they were able to resolve that on the Murphy's Grade project. Angels Creek Trail project was, while the whole map, both phase 1, 2, and 3 were there, a lot of it was focused on the phase 1, which is from Tryon Park into the downtown Main Street area. And I'm trying to think, that was, for those two projects, those were kind of the highlights in the last month.
We picked up a piece of property.
Okay. Oh, and we also purchased a piece of property, 12 acres, to add to the Angels Creek Trail. And so that will help the city reduce the amount, it'll help us align the trail so we are mostly on public land. So, yeah. So that's the brief update with Melissa not being here. And, okay. Next is transit.
Well, I was going to have Melissa take that, but
We're
you wanna work through
closing
that?
3 of the projects. 2 of them are reporting at 100% complete, and
Ma-
the other one-
Melissa,
Yeah.
Mike.
So the 3 of them are closing that are reflecting 100%, and then we expect the new buses in September, hopefully.
Any questions? Any public? No? Okay. Moving on to council report. I will start to my left. Nothing?
Nothing to report.
Okay.
The Blue Mountain Coalition for Youth and Families is having a bocce ball tournament September 14th up at the West Point Community Garden. All are welcome to attend. I believe meal tickets are $25, and there will be other items for purchase as well.
The biggest thing for the city right now is we lost Kevin, who is our assistant engineer, to map. Yeah. So with that, last night at our city council meeting, we extended the contract with Amy Augustine, and also a contract with Weber for surveying services, and then also extended a contract with a current engineer until we are able to fill that engineer position at the city. So it's ongoing. So recruitment's going on right now. If we're unable to fill them, we'll just each time extend those services until we're able to have somebody on staff. And that's it for me. Yeah. Ben?
I have nothing to report.
rate studies tomorrow. Rate studies tomorrow.
Amanda covered most of it. We do have our water rate study tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Bret Hart Center, Bret Hart somewhere. I don't know if it's in the library or the auditorium or multi-purpose room, but that'll be tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And that's all I got.
John?
Nothing to report.
Staff report. Any staff report? No?
Yeah, sure, I'll
Okay.
provide a few updates. We do have a lot going on. I provided a summary in my staff report, a few things, the Valley Springs Elementary, the Valley Springs Town Center connectivity plan. They're at the elementary school tonight for the back-to-school night to get some more feedback from parents and show them the concepts, so I'll be interested to see what the feedback is after tonight. The Pope Street study, we had our first community workshop last week that was well attended by residents who live kind of along Pope Street and in the residential neighborhood here. The pavement management system updates for both the city and county. I believe they've completed all of the road condition surveys of city and county roadways. And we have just purchased the software that will have shared access for both the city and county. So then the work will be incorporating all that data into the software, doing software training for county staff, and then developing kind of the scenarios for pavement management for both the city and county. So you'll be seeing more information about that coming soon. And the short-range transit plan, I think as Kathy Topol had said, the short-range transit plan and our coordinated public transit human services transportation plan have been kicked off, and they've been doing a lot of stakeholder interviews. They're going to start surveying on the buses in the next month to get kind of rider feedback. So you'll also be seeing information from those processes as well. Happy to answer any questions on any projects that's going on.
I'm just happy with the progress over a very short amount of time you made on the Valley Springs connectivity plan when it was brought before you, and it's good strides towards positive progress to possibly acquire that grant.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other staff report? You guys good? Okay. And move on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. You got it, right? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
601, right? Yeah. Okay. So what do we do now? Because it says
Close the transit meeting first, and then we can go back to the closed session.
Okay, so we're going to go to transit, and then we'll come back and close into closed session, back into COG. Do we want like a 5-minute, or just go straight? Okay, I just want to make sure no one has to go to the bathroom or anything. We're all good? Okay. Okay. Now,
Go, Alvin, run.
5 minutes, is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Correct.
okay, so okay, everybody ready? We are going into Calaveras Transit. Roll call. This one does have roll call. Do you want to do roll?
Present.
Okay, mine says, okay. Then how do you get that moved out? Okay, consent agenda. There are 2 items on the consent agenda. Is there any board member that wishes to amend the consent agenda? No? Okay.
Pull number 1, so I can abstain.
Okay. Is there any public comment? No? Okay. Item 1 is pulled. Is there a motion to, we'll just do it. Is there a motion to approve item 1?
I'll make a motion to approve item 1.
Second.
Sorry, Tim?
Second.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
5, 1, 1. Right? Yeah. Okay. Consent agenda item 2. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda item 2?
So moved.
Yes.
So second.
Opposite? All in favor?
Aye.
601. Regular agenda, item C, public comment. Is there any public comment? This portion is reserved for any items that are not on the agenda. Nope, okay. Item 3, monthly performance report.
Okay, I'll take this
Sorry.
item. No,
Four.
no worries. This is a monthly summary report that we provide each month, usually just on the consent agenda, but I thought since it's year end, you can see the 12-month picture here. In September, we are going to bring, we're going to try to bring the year-end performance report that will have more of the financial information and kind of a rough look at what we anticipate the fare box recovery ratio will look like. So you'll get more information from that report. But this one just shows you kind of the year-end statistics with total ridership of 38,735 and our other vehicle service hours and miles statistics. So just put this on the regular agenda if the council had any questions or wanted to have a discussion regarding any of these performance metrics.
Any questions? No? Any public comment? No? Okay, do we need to motion to approve this, or?
No, this is
Okay.
informational, yeah.
Okay. Item 5.
Finally, your turn.
Hello, Cynthia Lawrence, Paratransit Services Contract Manager for Calaveras Connect. Just a few items. We did our safety and training, refresher training. We do that yearly with bloodborne pathogens and some safety, other safety ones that we do, fire and office and so on. But this time we had some bi-yearly ones, which was our defensive driving. And we also did a DAPS class, which is for people with disabilities. It's a sensitivity training. So those are all coming due, and we're getting through those. We did do some refresher training on Zoom entries, just really trying to keep the drivers fresh with that information. Sometimes they stumble a little bit with some of the things that are going on, all the contractor or road work and stuff, and they get a little flustered and forget that button to push it, so we went through that as well. Outreach events, so we're making great strides in our outreach events. The Saturday Hopper, we've extended service to Ironstone concerts. So that allows us to really reach out to our local hotels and motels that are in the area. We've met with some businesses as well as the Murphy's Business Association, just really doing some outreach, talking to them about some of the programs and things that we've got going on. I took out tons of literature and schedules. I touch base with them on a weekly basis, and then I also go out and I'll give them a breakdown of what today's times will be. And for the concerts, it gets confusing because we have several buses that go through there. So I did that for the last concert, and it really seemed to help with the phone calls because people are a little frustrated with reading our schedule. They see we're coming, but we're dropping off, we're not picking up, and so these are the times we're going, so they're happy with that as well. Selena Barlow and her team came out and did a nice photo shoot, so I'm sort of excited to see what those are going to look like, and that's for our marketing. And one of our drivers was nice enough to come in on a Sunday and spend the day with them and take them all around, and they were able to do that. They also did some of the photo shoots during Saturday's Hopper, I think it was on the 27th. I did sort of skip over, I'm sorry. On the Saturday Hopper for the 20th and also for the 27th, we had on the 20th, 363 riders, and that went and came back on our service. And then on the 27th, it was even higher. It was 440. And I'm thinking Toby Keith is going to cap us out, yeah. So we're really interested in seeing how that one's going to go. I've got a great team that does these concerts, and they are really keeping safety in mind and getting the people in and out. I've got a lady that is so wonderful. She's helping us with the crowd control because it gets a little wild at the end with the people. They've been having a good time, and so they're ready to go home. And lastly, my team member of the month is Scott McClure. He's our dispatcher, ops assistant. He handles the computers and stuff. Scott started with the service back when it was called Stagecoach, Calaveras Stagecoach. That was in 1999. And it was, I think, a welfare to work program. And he's been with us, with Calaveras Connect for 20 years. So we're pretty excited about that. If you pick up the phone and call him anytime between early mornings until 1:30, you're going to get Scott. And I don't think that there's not one soul that rides our service that doesn't know who he is. And so we just celebrate his work and time with the company. So. And that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Any question? I have one question. I don't know if it's to you or Melissa or Amber, but with the PG&E shutdowns, have you guys talked about what you're going to do with keeping the fleet running or keeping the dispatch running? Or if you don't have an answer, that's fine. I just wasn't sure if that conversation was happening with you guys as well.
It is. So we are discussing some of the what do we do in emergency events? And so the PG&E, when they you're talking about when they shut it down?
Yeah.
We do have a backup generator currently, so we can run base operations. Our radios, they run on a very small amount of energy, so we're not too worried about that as well. So we'll be able to maintain that. And then the drivers, and they'll be able to maintain service in general.
So what about the pumps? Will the pumps be able to operate?
There is one pump in town, I believe it's the Chevron. And so when CFN does not allow for us to use the service there because of energy, then we can go over there and they seem to have it set up, so which makes it really nice, yeah.
Yeah, but that's definitely been a discussion that we've been having, and we are working on emergency preparedness plan for the transit agency as well, and that should be a component of it. But we've also asked them to evaluate the backup generation and for a 5 to 7 day, shutdown, if that would actually get us through that and run, the equipment that we need to run. So it's a good question.
Any other?
No?
Okay.
Anybody going to Toby Keith?
Thank you. Thank you. Next, staff report. Anything?
Sure, I'm going to add to what Cynthia talked about, the Saturday Hopper concerts. We've done 2 so far, and it's been definitely a learning experience of logistics. And I think Cynthia and her team have gotten back to the yard at 1:30 or 2 a.m. So it's a lot of work, and we've had to add buses to the service just because of the ridership. So to give you context, our Saturday Hopper right now is getting about 25 people a day. So on concert days, we're transporting about 60 during the regular Saturday Hopper, and then we transported over 300 just for the concert. So it's definitely a crowd, and it's good. It's a good partnership. So we're hoping that this will increase, ridership on the Saturday Hopper as well. But just want to thank Cynthia. I think she has 3 staff out there as well, so they're working really hard. But Ironstone's being a good partner as well. Our student fair program starts on August 15th, where Columbia College students get to ride all transit buses Monday through Friday just with their student ID. And that's that partnership where Columbia College is paying part of it, and then our grant funds from LC Top is paying part of that. So we've got to start promoting that service. As Cynthia mentioned, we are preparing for our next marketing effort. So we did a photo shoot and rider testimonial campaign a couple weeks ago on Sunday. So a driver drove us around all over the county. I got over 400 photos. It's great. So we're looking forward to kind of getting those materials out there and promoting the system and educating people on where we actually go and can take people. We talked last transit agency meeting about a reserve policy. We're still kind of reviewing that with our auditor and legal counsel, so we'll be bringing that to you in September. So I just wanted to update you on that item. But if council has any other questions on any transit items or issues, happy to answer.
Okay. And with that, we move into adjournment. If Melissa and Aaron don't have anything? No? Okay. So we adjourn and we'll close.